The night the princess vanished, the skies of the Oran Empire bled silver and blue. Storm clouds rolled across the capital, thunder shaking the crystal towers that reached into the heavens. Inside the royal palace, silence had fallen, thick, cold, and unnatural. Only the sound of rain against the glass echoed through the halls. Queen Seraphine stood before the grand window of her throne chamber, her silver crown dim under the flickering lights. Her long white hair flowed like silk down her back, her golden armor polished but untouched. She was a ruler of stars, a being of near immortal grace, yet that night, her face showed something no one had ever seen before. Fear. Her daughter, Princess Elira, was missing. The royal guards had found the wreckage of the princess's hover carriage near the border of the dark expanse, a region forbidden even to the bravest of soldiers. The carriage was broken open like a cracked shell, the pilot dead and the two escorts burned by unknown energy. There were no tracks, no clues, and no trace of Elira's body, only a faint shimmer of strange energy, something that did not belong to any known species in the galaxy. The queen gripped the edge of the marble balcony until her knuckles turned pale. "Find her," she whispered to her generals, voice trembling with power and pain. "Find my daughter, whatever it costs." The Empire obeyed. For months, Oran fleets crossed the stars. They searched abandoned outposts, scanned asteroid fields, and even entered human territory against treaty laws. Hundreds of soldiers vanished in the search. Still, no sign of Elira. Whispers began to spread through the royal halls. Some said she had been taken by slavers. Others believed she had been destroyed in the storm. But a few, the cruel ones, whispered that maybe she had run away. That maybe the princess had grown tired of her mother's strict rule and fled the empire. When those words reached the queen's ears, her heart cracked like glass. She locked herself inside her chamber for 7 days. The once bright throne room turned cold, its golden banners folded away. The songs of the palace musicians were silenced. The laughter that had once filled the gardens disappeared. The Oran Empire mourned with its queen, but none mourned more deeply than Seraphine herself. Every night, she walked the corridors where Elira used to play. The paintings on the wall seemed to watch her, each one showing a memory of brighter days. Elira at her coronation as princess, Elira's first flight through the training fields, Elira's soft smile when she placed flowers in her mother's hair during the Star Festival. Now those memories cut like blades. Sometimes, the queen would find herself whispering into the wind, "Elira, my light, where are you?" But the wind never answered. Years passed. Seasons came and went across the golden world of Oran. The queen ruled with strength and wisdom, but her smile was gone. She still wore her crown, still spoke to her council, still guided her people, but it was as if she had left her heart in that storm. The empire's poets began to call her the Silent Queen. No one dared mention the princess in her presence anymore. Not even the stars dared to shine too brightly above the palace, as if mourning with her. Then, one night, 7 long years after the disappearance, a storm came again. It was almost identical to the one that had taken Elira. The lightning flashed in the same rhythm, and the thunder rolled through the same valleys. The queen sat alone in her chamber, staring at the empty cradle of her granddaughter that would never exist. When lightning lit the horizon for a brief second, she thought she saw a shape in the clouds, a figure with flowing silver hair, eyes full of light. It looked like her daughter. She stood quickly, heart pounding, but when the light faded, the figure was gone. She pressed her hand to the cold glass. "Even the storm mocks me now," she whispered. But in that fleeting vision, something inside her stirred, something she had long buried. Hope. Far across the stars, beyond the edge of Oran space, a small blue planet turned quietly under its sun. It was a world known as Terra Nova, a human colony scarred by war but alive with determination. And on that planet, a woman with silver eyes sat outside a wooden cottage, humming softly as 2 small children played around her feet. Her name was Elira, the lost princess. Her once regal robes were gone. She wore simple clothes now, human fabric, rough and plain, but her grace still remained. The wind caught her pale hair as she watched her children chase one another through the grass, their laughter echoing through the hills. Her youngest, a boy named Sam, ran to her and tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, look." "Fireflies!" Alara smiled and cupped the tiny glowing insect in her hand. Its light shimmered against her skin, soft and pure. "Beautiful," she whispered. "Just like you." Her daughter Lyra, older and thoughtful, climbed into her lap. "Mommy, tell us a story. Tell us about where you came from." Alyra's smile faded for a moment. She looked at the stars overhead, the same stars that hung above Oran, though she had not seen them from there in years. "Someday," she said softly, "I'll tell you everything. But for now, just know this: I came from a place very far away, a place full of light and love, and one day we'll visit it together." The children nodded, content with her words, and ran off again. Alyra's gaze softened, but her heart ached. She missed her mother, her home, her people. She missed the scent of the Oran gardens and the songs of the starbirds. Yet when she thought of her past, she also remembered the human who had saved her, the man who had found her after her ship crashed in a burning forest, who had carried her despite the cuts and burns, who had whispered words of comfort even though she could not yet understand him. His name had been Aaron. He had taught her human language, human laughter, and human love. Together they had built this small home, planted gardens, and watched the sunrise every morning. But now he was gone, taken by an accident in the mines 2 winters ago. She had buried him beneath the twin moons, singing both in the language of men and the songs of the Oran stars. Sometimes she still felt his presence in the wind, like a warm whisper brushing her hair. Alyra closed her eyes and held her children close when they returned. She thought of the past she had lost and the future she now held in her arms. She didn't know that across the stars her mother still searched for her. She didn't know that soon fate would bring both worlds together, human and Oran, love and grief, past and future. For now, she was just a mother, a lost princess, a light hidden far from the empire that had once called her their brightest star. And though her world was small, her heart still carried the same royal fire, because love, she had learned, was stronger than any empire, and even after 7 long years, it still connected her to the woman who waited for her in the Palace of Light. Morning came softly to Terra Nova. The golden light of the twin suns slipped through the mist, touching the grass and warming the small wooden cottage where Alyra and her children lived. The world here was gentle, nothing like the shining, proud empire she once called home. There were no crystal towers, no floating palaces, no royal processions, only wind, soil, and laughter. Alyra had grown to love it. She stood outside her cottage, a hand resting on the wooden fence, watching her children chase each other through the garden. Lyra was quick and clever, her small feet light on the ground. Sam was younger, clumsy but full of joy. His laughter filled the air, chasing away the silence that sometimes visited Alyra's heart. They were her light now, her reason, her world. She still remembered the day she had fallen from the stars. The memory came to her often in dreams. The crash, the fire, the pain. The cold rain of this planet had poured over her broken body. She had thought she was dying, but through the blur of smoke and fear a voice had reached her. Human, warm. It was Aaron. He had found her lying among the wreckage, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dark. He had carried her back to the colony, though his arm was bleeding, though the air was filled with the scent of burning metal. At first, she had been frightened of him. Humans were strange to her, short-lived, emotional, and unrefined compared to her people. But Aaron was different. He spoke with kindness even when she didn't understand his words. He never asked where she came from or what she was. He simply said, "You're safe now. You're home." And somehow she believed him. Over the years, she learned his language, his ways, his humor. He built her a small house with his own hands. He taught her to grow vegetables, to cook, to laugh at bad weather. He showed her how to love not with perfection, but with sincerity. Then came their children. 2 miracles that changed her forever. She remembered holding Lyra for the first time, her little eyes shining silver and blue, whispering, "You are the bridge between worlds, my love." When Sam was born 2 years later, his small hand gripped her finger so tightly that she wept. Those were the best years of her life. But life, even on peaceful worlds, has storms. Aaron's death came without warning, a mining accident in the southern hills. He had gone to help rescue trapped workers after a tunnel collapse. The rescue succeeded, but the tunnel fell again before he could leave. Elira had felt the shock in her bones as if the stars themselves had dimmed. She had buried him beneath the twin moons where the air smelled of wild flowers. Her children had stood beside her, too young to understand. And when the night came, she had sung the song of farewell from her world, a song her mother had sung once to comfort her. The song was full of light and sorrow, and though no human understood its meaning, everyone who heard it that night had wept. Now 3 years had passed since that day. Elira's life had found a rhythm again. Mornings were for teaching the children, afternoons for tending the garden, and evenings for watching the stars. Sometimes the villagers came to visit her. Some called her the Silver Woman because of her hair and eyes, but they treated her kindly. They had long stopped asking about her origin. They simply accepted her as one of their own. Humans had a strange gift for that, for seeing hearts before faces. But deep inside, Elira still felt the pull of her old life. At night, when her children were asleep, she would step outside and look up at the endless sky. The stars above Terra Nova looked different, but she could still find the constellation of her home, the crown of Oran. It was faint, but always there. She often wondered if her mother still searched for her, if the queen ever looked at those same stars and whispered her name, if she was angry, or simply heartbroken. Elira touched the pendant she always wore, a small fragment of her ship's crystal core, the only thing that had survived the crash. It glowed faintly when she held it, like a heartbeat. That night, as she held the crystal, something changed. The glow brightened, stronger than ever before. It pulsed once, twice, then began to emit a faint sound, like a whisper carried by the wind. Her breath caught. She recognized the pattern immediately. It was an Oran distress signal, the kind only her people could send. Her hands trembled as she placed the crystal on the table. "After all these years," she whispered. She sat there for a long time, staring at the pulsing light. Her heart was divided in two. Part of her longed to respond, to send a signal back, to let her people know she was alive, to see her mother again, to step once more into the light she had lost. But another part of her, the human part, the mother part, was terrified. What would happen if they found her? What would they do if they saw her children? Half human, half Oran? Her people were proud, pure-blooded, ancient. They looked down on all other species, especially humans. Her children would never be accepted there. They would be seen as mistakes, and she would be branded as the one who stained royal blood. Her thoughts spiraled. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Oh, Mother, what would you think of me now?" She turned off the beacon. The light faded slowly until the crystal was dark again. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that for one brief moment, the signal had already escaped into the void. Somewhere across the galaxy, on the far side of Oran space, in a hidden observatory beneath the royal palace, a long silent receiver came alive. It flashed once, displaying a faint code. Then the message repeated, again and again. A young officer, startled, called for the Queen's advisor. "Your Grace, there's something you must see," he said, voice trembling. "A signal. It carries the royal frequency, the princess's frequency." Back on Terra Nova, Elira stood outside her house, her children asleep inside. The sky was full of stars. The wind was cool and soft. She looked up at the constellations, not knowing that her world was about to change. She whispered the lullaby her mother had once sung. "May the stars guard you. May the light find you. May love guide your way home." Her voice trembled slightly. Then she smiled faintly through her tears. "I'm already home," she said to herself. But far away, in the heart of the galaxy, ancient engines were awakening. The Oran Empire had heard the call, and the Queen, who had not smiled in 7 years, would soon look to the stars and whisper the same name she had whispered every night, Elira. 3 weeks passed after that strange night. The crystal beacon on Elira's table lay silent once again, its glow gone as if it had never awakened. She had convinced herself it was nothing, perhaps just an old memory buried in the machine. She wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. Life on Terra Nova went on as always. The winds brushed the golden grass. The twin suns rose each morning, painting the skies pink and blue. Children's laughter echoed in the valley, and the scent of wild herbs drifted from the hills. Yet inside Elira's heart, something had changed. A quiet unease followed her now like a shadow she couldn't shake. At night, when the world was silent, she thought she heard faint whispers in the wind, words in her native tongue, words she hadn't spoken in years. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night, breath trembling, half expecting to see soldiers of silver armor standing outside her door. But there was nothing. Only the sound of her children breathing softly in their beds. Still, her instincts, the instincts of an Oran royal, told her that something was coming. One morning, while Elira gathered herbs near the meadow, little Sam ran to her, waving his arms. "Mommy, look at the sky," he shouted. She looked up. A line of light streaked across the horizon, bright, controlled, and too perfect to be a natural meteor. Her heart froze. The air seemed to tremble around her. That was no falling star. That was a ship. She stood still for a long moment, unable to move. Then, as the light disappeared beyond the clouds, she gathered her children quickly. "Inside. Both of you," she said softly, forcing a smile. "Now." Lyra frowned, sensing the fear her mother tried to hide. "Is it bad people?" she asked quietly. Elira shook her head, though her hands trembled. "I don't know yet." She closed the door behind them and looked at the old beacon once more. It sat lifeless, dark, yet she could almost feel it pulsing again, like a heartbeat buried beneath her floor. Her heart whispered one truth she didn't want to admit. "They've found me." Far beyond Terra Nova's orbit, space tore open in a quiet flash of blue light. An Oran royal cruiser slipped through the rift, massive, sleek, and glowing with energy. The insignia of the Empire shimmered across its hull, a silver crown encircled by 7 stars. Inside the command deck, the Queen of Oran stood tall, her golden robes flowing behind her. The years had carved lines of sorrow on her face, but her eyes, those sharp, starlit eyes, were alive again. For the first time in 7 years, there was hope. "Lock onto the signal," she commanded. "Bring us down quietly." Her voice carried both command and pain. The crew obeyed. The ship began its silent descent, sliding through clouds like a falling star. Queen Seraphine stood by the observation window, watching the green-blue planet below. Her heart pounded as she whispered the name that had haunted her dreams for years. Elira. Back on the ground, the people of Terra Nova gathered outside their homes as a strange light filled the sky. The enormous ship broke through the clouds, silver and gold, shining like a living sun. It moved with silent grace, its engines whispering through the air. No one in the colony had ever seen anything like it. Children pointed and gasped. Farmers dropped their tools and stared. Elira knew exactly what it was. She stood at the edge of her small garden, holding Lyra and Sam close. The ship landed gently in the open field beyond their home, its size dwarfing the entire settlement. The air rippled with energy as the landing ramps descended. Her breath caught when she saw the banners, blue and silver with the royal crest of Oran. She had imagined this moment so many times, in dreams, in fears and silent prayers. But now that it was real, she felt frozen, trapped between 2 worlds. The ramp touched the ground. From the bright doorway, figures appeared, Oran royal guards in their shining armor, tall and radiant, each step perfectly in sync. Behind them came a woman cloaked in gold and white, her crown catching the light of the sun. Elira's breath broke. Her mother, Queen Seraphine. The queen's eyes swept across the field, cold and commanding at first. She looked at the human villagers with distant curiosity, but then her gaze found the small figure standing by the garden gate, silver hair, bright eyes, her daughter. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Seraphine took a step forward, then another, until she was running, the golden folds of her robe flowing behind her like wings. "Elira," she whispered. Her voice cracked as she reached out, trembling. Elira took one hesitant step forward. "Mother." The two met halfway, and for a moment time itself seemed to stop. The queen embraced her daughter, holding her as though she might disappear again. Tears ran silently down her cheeks. "My light," she whispered, the old childhood name falling from her lips. "My lost light." Elira closed her eyes and clung to her mother's arms, feeling 1,000 memories rise at once. Of the palace gardens, of laughter, of lullabies sung under silver moons. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I'm so sorry I never came back. You're here now, the queen said, her voice shaking. That is all that matters. For a brief, shining moment, all the pain and distance between them faded. Then from behind Elira, two small voices called out, Mommy? Both women turned. Lyra and Sam stood a few steps away, clutching each other's hands. Their wide eyes looked at the tall stranger with the golden crown. Seraphine's expression changed. Surprise flickered into confusion, then disbelief. Elira, she said slowly, her gaze falling on the children. Who are they? Elira's heart skipped. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked at her children, her little miracles, and then back at her mother. They're mine, she said finally, voice trembling. My children. The queen blinked, stunned. Her gaze swept over the children's faces, their soft brown hair, their human features, but when the sunlight caught their eyes, she froze. Silver. Orin Silver, they're half human? The queen whispered. Elira nodded, her throat tight. Yes, their father was human. His name was Aaron. He saved me when my ship crashed. He gave me life. And love. Silence fell like a blade between them. Behind the queen, the guards exchanged uneasy glances. The human villagers watched in nervous awe. The air grew heavy. Seraphine's voice softened, but it carried deep pain. You loved a human? You bore his children? Yes, Elira said firmly, tears in her eyes. And I would do it again. They are my heart. My family. The queen looked at the children again. Lyra was hiding behind her mother's dress. Sam peeked out curiously, clutching a tiny flower in his hand. For a long, breathless moment, the mighty queen of Oran, who had ruled for centuries, who had conquered worlds, stood frozen before two small children who were half of everything she once despised. And in that moment, she realized her daughter's life had become something the Empire could never understand. Elira knelt beside her children, holding their hands tightly. Don't be afraid, she whispered to them. This is your grandmother. The queen stared at her grandchildren in silence. Then, without another word, she turned her face toward the horizon. Prepare the ship, she told her guards quietly. We returned to Oran. She looked at her daughter once more, her voice soft, but her eyes full of conflict. It's time to come home. Elira looked down at her children, then back at her mother. Her voice was barely a whisper. We are home. The Oran Royal Cruiser rose silently from the green plains of Terra Nova, its engines glowing like captured suns. The human villagers stood far below, shielding their eyes as the ship lifted toward the clouds. None of them spoke. They simply watched as their silver woman and her two shining children disappeared into the sky. Inside the ship, Elira sat near a large observation window, holding her children close. Outside, the human planet grew smaller and smaller until it was only a blue dot in the endless dark. Sam leaned against her arm. Mommy, are we leaving forever? Elira brushed her hand through his hair, her heart aching. For now, yes, my love. But we'll come back one day. Lyra stared out the window quietly. Is that where you're from? She asked softly. Yes, Elira whispered, looking at the stars. That's where I was born. A world of golden light, and also of loneliness. Her voice faded at the last word. She wasn't sure what waited for her there, love or judgment. Across the room, the Queen of Oran stood tall, surrounded by her guards. Her golden robes shimmered faintly in the low light, but her face remained unreadable. She hadn't spoken to her daughter since they boarded. She had simply said, "We leave at once." Now she stood silently, watching the stars pass by, her heart a storm of emotions she could not show. She had dreamed of this moment for years, of finding her daughter alive. But she had never imagined finding her like this, with children, half-human children. For a proud ruler who had built her empire on purity and strength, it was a truth that tore her heart apart. She wanted to be happy. She wanted to hold Elira forever and never let her go again. But the faces of the royal council haunted her mind. The laws, the traditions, the pride of Oran blood. Could she protect her daughter now, or had Elira already broken everything she had once sworn to preserve? Hours passed. The children eventually fell asleep, their small hands still tangled with their mother's. Elira sat awake, staring at the queen's reflection in the glass. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Mother, you haven't said a word to me." The queen's eyes softened, but she did not turn. "There are too many words inside me, child. I fear if I start I will not stop." "Then let them out," Elira said gently. "Let them out before they break you." For a moment silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Then the queen turned slowly. Her gaze met her daughter's, full of both love and sorrow. "I searched every corner of the stars for you," she said. "I burned fleets. I broke treaties. I sent good men to their deaths, all for the hope of seeing your face again. And when I finally find you, you stand before me with human children in your arms." Her voice cracked slightly. "Do you know what this means, Elira? To our people? To our name?" Elira looked down at her sleeping children, then back at her mother. "I know exactly what it means," she said softly. "It means that I found something greater than any throne. I found love." The queen's jaw tightened. "Love does not change the blood that runs through your veins." "No," Elira said, "but it changes the heart that carries it." For a long moment neither spoke. The hum of the ship was the only sound between them. Then the queen sighed and turned away. "Rest. You will need your strength when we return. The council will demand answers." Elira's eyes darkened. "The council can demand all they wish. My answers will not change." The queen closed her eyes briefly. "You are still your mother's daughter," she murmured, "stubborn and full of fire." Elira smiled faintly, though her heart felt heavy. When the cruiser broke through the edge of Oran space, the sight before them was breathtaking. Golden light flooded the windows as the royal homeworld came into view, a shining planet wrapped in clouds of silver mist. Floating cities glimmered above oceans of light. Towers of crystal reached so high they seemed to touch the stars themselves. Lyra and Sam pressed their faces to the window in awe. "It's beautiful," Lyra gasped, Elira's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "It always was." But as the ship descended, her joy turned to dread. She saw the palace. It stood exactly as she remembered, vast and radiant, built from white stone that sparkled like diamond. The golden banners of the royal house waved proudly in the high winds. But beneath its beauty, she felt the cold weight of judgment waiting. When the ship landed on the royal platform, trumpets sounded through the air. Hundreds of courtiers, nobles, and soldiers stood in perfect lines, their eyes turned toward the ramp. The queen stepped forward first, her posture regal and unshaken. Elira followed behind, holding her children's hands tightly. The crowd murmured the moment they saw her silver hair, gasps of recognition, of disbelief, of shock. "The lost princess," someone whispered. "She lives." But then their eyes fell on the children and the whisper changed tone. "Humans," another murmured. "Half-breeds?" Elira felt the sting of their words, though she kept her chin high. Sam squeezed her hand tightly, frightened by all the staring faces. "It's all right," she whispered to him. "Just keep walking." The queen walked ahead, silent and proud. Her people bowed as she passed, but when Elira and her children followed, the courtiers only stared. No one bowed to them. They reached the grand hall of the palace, a room Elira once played in as a child, now cold and vast. The marble floor gleamed, and tall pillars of crystal glowed with blue fire. The queen stopped before her throne and turned. "Welcome home, my daughter," she said softly, for all to hear. Elira looked around, her voice trembling. "Home?" she repeated. "It doesn't feel like home anymore." Before the queen could answer, the doors opened again. The High Council entered, 10 elders dressed in robes of silver. Their faces were stern, their eyes sharp. "Majesty," said the eldest, bowing, "we rejoice at your daughter's return. But we must speak of her companions." The queen's gaze hardened. "They are her children," she said. "You will speak of them with respect." The elder hesitated, then bowed again. "Of course, your majesty. But the law, the queen said sharply, is written by me." A tense silence followed. Elira looked at her mother, a small flicker of gratitude in her eyes. But she knew this peace wouldn't last. The real battle, the one between love and pride, had just begun. That night, the queen sat alone in her private chamber. The empire was asleep, but her mind was restless. She stared at the old painting of Elira as a child, smiling, wearing a crown too big for her head. Now that same child was grown, and she had brought something into this world the queen didn't understand, something that frightened and amazed her at once. Love that crossed worlds. She looked out through the balcony window toward the stars and whispered to the night, "How do I choose between my crown and my daughter?" Outside, the twin moons rose slowly, lighting the palace with a soft glow. And far below, in her old chamber, Illyra knelt by her children's beds, brushing their hair gently as they slept. "Tomorrow will be hard," she whispered, "but we'll face it together." She pressed a kiss on each of their foreheads, then looked up at the sky beyond her window. The stars of Oran shone like tears of light, beautiful, distant and eternal, and somewhere among them, fate waited. The next morning arrived with the cold light of Oran dawn spilling through the palace windows. The golden towers outside shimmered like fire, but inside the royal halls the air was heavy and still. Everyone knew today would decide more than just a family's fate. It would decide the future of two worlds. Illyra stood before a tall mirror, dressing her children with careful hands. Lyra wore a soft silver gown and Sam, a simple tunic of white. Both looked nervous. "Mommy," Lyra whispered. "Why do they all stare at us like we did something bad?" Illyra smiled softly, though her eyes were tired. "Because they don't understand yet. But that's why we're here, to help them see." Sam frowned. "Do they hate us?" Illyra paused, her voice gentle. "No, my love. They're just afraid of what they don't know." She knelt, cupping both their faces. "Listen to me. Whatever happens today, you must remember who you are. You are brave, you are kind, and you are loved." The children nodded, holding her hands tightly. A guard appeared at the door. "Princess Illyra," he said, bowing. "The council awaits you." Illyra rose, straightened her shoulders, and took her children's hands. Together they walked through the long corridors of the palace, their footsteps echoing softly. The walls were lined with portraits of past rulers, stern faces carved in marble and gold. As they passed, Illyra felt those stone eyes watching her, judging her. "Do you belong here anymore?" they seemed to whisper. She lifted her chin higher. Yes, she thought. More than ever, the council chamber was vast and cold. The floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the light from tall crystalline lamps. At the center stood the queen, her crown gleaming like the sun itself. Around her sat 10 council members cloaked in silver and blue. Every eye turned toward Illyra as she entered. Some looked curious, some angry, some fearful. The queen motioned gently. "Come forward, my daughter." Illyra stepped forward, her children staying close. One of the elders, a thin, sharp-faced man named Viel, rose first. "Your Majesty," he began, bowing slightly, "we honor the return of your blood. Truly it is a miracle, but we must face what stands before us with clear eyes." He turned toward Illyra, his voice cool. "You have brought with you 2 human offspring. Do you deny this?" Illyra met his gaze without fear. "I do not. They are my children, born of love between myself and a human man." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The word human carried weight here like a shadow over light. Viel's expression tightened. "Then it is true. You have mixed royal blood with that of a primitive race." "Primitive," Illyra repeated softly. "The humans taught me compassion when war had left me broken. They gave me family when I had none. If that is primitive, then perhaps our people should learn from them." Another elder, Lady Siren, spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "Princess, you must understand the fear this brings. The Oran bloodline is sacred. It has ruled for 1,000 years. If your children—" "My children," Illyra interrupted, "are as much Oran as I am. Their hearts shine as bright as any star in this empire. Look at them, not their blood." Lyra, frightened but brave, stepped forward beside her mother. Her small voice trembled. "We didn't mean to make anyone sad. We just wanted to see Grandma." The queen's eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly hid it behind royal calm. The council chamber fell silent. Even the guards looked uncertain. Then Viel spoke again, his tone sharp. "The child speaks sweetly, but laws are not written by emotion. The royal line cannot be tainted. We must protect our future. With respect, Your Majesty, the princess and her offspring should not remain here." At those words, Illyra's heart froze. She turned to her mother, eyes wide. "Mother?" The queen said nothing. Her fingers tightened around her throne, her face pale. The silence stretched like a knife between them. Finally, Illyra whispered, her voice breaking, I came home because I thought you still wanted me. The queen's lips trembled. You do not understand the storm this will cause, Illyra. I must protect our people. Tears welled in Illyra's eyes. And who protects your daughter? Her words echoed through the chamber, cutting through the cold air like thunder. Even the elders shifted uncomfortably. Sam suddenly tugged his mother's hand. His small voice rose, brave but trembling. You shouldn't cry, Mommy. We can go home. I don't need a palace. I just need you. Something in that little voice broke through the queen's heart like sunlight through clouds. Her vision blurred for a second and she looked at the boy. The small, human child who spoke with such pure love. He reminded her of Illyra long ago. After the council adjourned, the queen remained alone in the chamber, staring at the empty floor. The room was silent except for the slow beating of her heart. The council wanted exile. They wanted to protect the throne from impurity. But what was the throne worth if it cost her daughter's soul? She rose from her seat and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the people gathering below, curious about the lost princess. Their faces were filled with wonder and whispers. In that moment, she realized something. The people didn't hate her daughter. They were simply waiting to be told how to feel. A queen's word was law. A queen's belief could shape the hearts of millions, and for the first time in years, she knew what she had to do. That evening, the queen summoned Illyra and her children to the grand balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and crimson. Thousands of citizens filled the square below, waiting. Illyra stood behind her mother, unsure. Why have you called us here? The queen turned, her eyes softer than Illyra had ever seen. Because it's time the world saw the truth, and it's time I stopped hiding behind fear. Then she stepped forward, her voice carrying across the square like rolling thunder. My people, she declared, the stars have blessed us today. My daughter, our lost princess, has returned to us not as a symbol of shame but of unity. The crowd murmured in confusion. The council members exchanged alarmed glances. She comes to us with children of both worlds, the queen continued. Let them remind us that strength is not in blood but in heart. That love is the bridge between stars. Illyra stared at her mother in shock. The queen turned to her, tears glimmering in her eyes. Forgive me, my child, she whispered. For too long I ruled with fear. Today I choose love. Then she knelt. The queen knelt before her daughter and her grandchildren, in front of the entire empire. Gasps filled the air. Illyra fell to her knees too, pulling her mother into a trembling embrace. The crowd below, silent at first, began to cheer, softly at first, then louder and louder until the sound shook the air. Sam and Lyra smiled, their small hands glowing faintly in the golden light. And for the first time in centuries, the Oran homeworld witnessed something greater than power. They witnessed forgiveness. The queen's words had changed everything. That evening, the entire empire buzzed like a hive stirred awake. From the golden towers of the capital to the farthest moon colonies, news spread like fire. The queen knelt before the half-human children. The princess has returned. The royal bloodline has mixed with the humans. Some wept in joy. Others screamed in anger. And in the palace, peace lasted only a few precious hours before the storm began to rise. Illyra stood by her window, the city below glowing like a sea of stars. Lyra and Sam slept nearby, curled up together beneath silk covers. The sound of their soft breathing was the only thing keeping Illyra calm. She could still hear the cheers from the square echoing in her mind. Her mother's voice had carried hope to every corner of Oran space, but she knew hope alone would not silence those who feared change. The queen entered quietly, her golden cloak removed, her crown resting in her hands. For once she looked less like a ruler and more like a tired mother. You should rest, Illyra said softly. The queen smiled faintly. I will, but not yet. The council demanded an emergency session. They are not pleased. I expected that, Illyra said. You defied everything they believe in. Yes, the queen sighed. And I would do it again. Illyra looked at her mother with surprise. You mean that? The queen nodded. For years I led with fear of losing power. But today when I saw your children, when I saw their eyes, I remembered what true strength looks like. It's not in crowns or armies. It's in love that asks for nothing back. Her voice trembled. You gave me that lesson, my daughter. Tears glimmered in Elira's eyes. Then maybe there's hope for all of us. But before they could speak again, a sharp knock sounded at the door. A guard stepped in, bowing quickly. Your Majesty, forgive me. There has been unrest in the lower districts. Crowds have gathered. The council's supporters are calling it betrayal. The Queen's face darkened. Betrayal? They say your actions have broken divine law. They call for your abdication. The room fell silent. Elira stood still, feeling the weight of guilt in her chest. This is because of me. The Queen turned sharply. No, this is because of fear. You are not the cause, you are the test. She turned to the guard. Ready the royal fleet. If violence begins, I will speak to my people directly. The guard hesitated. My Queen, that may be dangerous. I have faced worse, the Queen said firmly. Leave us. The guard bowed and left, his boots echoing through the hall. When the door closed, Elira looked at her mother. They won't listen easily, the Queen smiled sadly. Then we will make them listen. The next morning, the sky over the capital was filled with golden ships. Crowds gathered in the streets shouting, some with anger, some with tears. Banners waved, some with the Queen's sigil, some with the council's mark. From the highest balcony, the Queen stood tall beside her daughter and grandchildren. Her voice rang through the air, carried by the broadcast towers across the empire. My people, she began, her tone calm but strong. I have heard your cries. You fear that I have betrayed our laws. You fear that our bloodline has been corrupted. Her gaze swept over the sea of faces. But I ask you this, what is the worth of blood if it carries no mercy? What is the worth of law if it crushes love beneath its weight? The crowd fell quiet, listening. These children, she said, resting her hands on Sam and Lyra's shoulders, carry the best of two worlds. From me, they carry our light. From their father, they carry the courage to love without pride. That union does not weaken us, it strengthens us. As her words spread, the crowd began to stir again. Some clapped. Others shouted angrily. Then a roar echoed from the distance, a blast from a plasma shell striking the sky above the palace. The guards shouted in alarm. Smoke filled the horizon. It's the council guard, one soldier yelled. They've turned their fleet against the palace. Elira's heart froze. They're attacking? The Queen's eyes turned cold as steel. So they have chosen war. The city plunged into chaos. Ships screamed through the sky and bright fire rained from above. The royal fleet rose to defend the palace, golden shields flaring against the storm. Inside, Elira gathered her children, rushing through the corridors as the walls shook. The Queen followed, guards surrounding them. Sam clung to his mother's cloak. Mommy, I'm scared. Elira knelt, grabbing his hands. Don't be afraid. Stay close to me, both of you. Lyra's voice trembled. Are we going to die? Elira forced a smile through her tears. Not today. They ran through the halls toward the safe chamber, but an explosion tore through the corridor ahead, throwing them backward. Smoke filled the air. The Queen coughed, waving her guards forward. Protect the children, she shouted. The guards formed a wall around them. Through the chaos, Elira saw movement. Civilians rushing toward the palace gates, waving human-made banners. At first she didn't understand, then she saw the message on the flags. United in light, humanity stands with Orin. Her breath caught. The humans had seen the news, had sent help through the Alliance ships orbiting nearby. They had come not with weapons, but with hope. Human medical ships were landing across the capital, helping the injured, shielding civilians from fire. The Queen stared in disbelief. They came to protect us? Yes, Elira said, her voice breaking with emotion. Because they believe what you said. Hours passed. The battle raged, but the Queen's loyalists and the human aid ships slowly pushed back the rebellion. The Council's fleet, seeing their people fighting alongside humans, began to hesitate. By nightfall, the sky grew silent again. The flames faded. The Queen stood amid the wreckage of her once perfect city, her face streaked with ash and tears. Elira walked to her side, her hands trembling. It's over. The Queen nodded weakly. Yes, but not without cost. They looked out over the square. Broken stone, burning banners, and people weeping among the ruins. But also humans and Orans helping each other, carrying the wounded, sharing water. It was a scene no law could have created. Only love could. The Queen turned to her daughter, her voice soft. You were right, Elira. Love truly changes the heart that carries it. Elira took her hand. Then let this be our new beginning. Later that night, when the fires had cooled and the city slept, the queen stood in the Hall of Stars. The ancient lights above glowed softly, showing every past ruler of Oran carved into glass. Elira joined her, her children running ahead, laughing as they chased the beams of light. "They're safe," Elira whispered. "That's all I ever wanted," the queen smiled. "And because of you, our world may finally understand what it means to be alive." She placed her crown on Elira's head gently. "Mother, what are you doing?" Elira gasped. "I am tired," the queen said softly. "The new world needs a voice of love, not an echo of fear. It needs you." Tears fell down Elira's cheeks. "I can't rule. I don't even belong." The queen touched her face. "You belong more than anyone. You are the bridge between two suns." For the first time, Elira felt peace. She looked at her children playing under the golden stars, and at her mother, the strongest woman she had ever known, and whispered, "Then let's build this new world together." The queen smiled, eyes glistening. Together. And outside, beyond the palace walls, the people of Iran and the humans of Terra Nova worked side by side beneath a single sky. Proof that sometimes, humanity's greatest power was not its weapons or its will, but its heart. Years passed. The once divided world of Oran had changed beyond recognition. The golden cities that once shunned outsiders now shone with the laughter of both Oran and human voices. The streets, once empty of warmth, now carried songs in 2 languages. The war that nearly destroyed everything had become a lesson written in every heart. That fear builds walls, but love builds bridges, and at the center of it all stood Elira, the daughter who had once been lost, the mother who had once been judged, and now the queen who ruled both worlds. The great palace of Oran no longer looked the same. The banners of old had been replaced with a new crest. 2 suns joined together, surrounded by a ring of stars. It was the symbol of the new alliance, the unity of Oran and Terra. Inside the palace garden, Elira sat beneath a tall silver tree, its leaves glowing softly under the morning light. Beside her, her children played among the flowers. Lyra was no longer the shy girl she had once been. Her silver eyes glimmered with confidence as she practiced with the small energy staff her grandmother had once given her. Sam, tall and kind-eyed, sat nearby, reading messages from both worlds. He had inherited his father's gentle heart and his mother's stubborn spirit. As Elira watched them, she smiled softly. Her heart was full yet heavy, because today was not just another day. It was her mother's last. The queen, now old and frail, lay in her chamber surrounded by soft golden light. The once commanding ruler looked peaceful, almost weightless, her crown resting beside her bed. When Elira entered, the old woman smiled weakly. "You're late," she whispered, her voice fragile but teasing. Elira knelt by her side, taking her hand gently. "You used to wait days for me. Surely you can wait a few minutes." The queen chuckled softly, her laugh a whisper, still stubborn. "I learned from you," Elira said, smiling through tears. The queen looked at her daughter's face, then at the light outside the window. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "The world we dreamed of," Elira nodded. "Because you believed in it." The queen's eyes softened. "No, my child. Because you taught me how." A quiet pause followed. The air felt sacred, like time itself was holding its breath. Then the queen said, "Do you remember the day I found you again?" Elira's eyes glistened. "I could never forget." "You were holding those 2 little hands," the queen whispered, smiling faintly. "So small, so full of life. And I thought the universe had given me a second chance to understand love. I was too proud before, too blind. But through them, I saw what kind of ruler I could have been." She looked toward the window again, the light glowing against her face. "You must promise me, Elira, don't let them forget. Don't let either world forget that love was the reason we survived." Elira squeezed her hand. "I promise." The queen smiled once more, her eyes drifting shut. "Good. Then my crown is in the right hands." A single tear rolled down her cheek as her breath faded like the last note of a song. Elira stayed there for a long time, holding her mother's hand until it grew still. Outside, the silver leaves whispered in the wind. That night, the city burned with light, not from fire but from candles. Millions gathered in the streets to honor the queen who had saved them from their own fears. Elira stood on the grand balcony, her children beside her, her heart heavy yet shining with pride. She gave her life for peace, Elira said softly to the crowd below. But peace does not end with her. It begins with us. Every time we choose kindness over fear, love over hate, we keep her alive. Her voice grew stronger. The queen is gone, but the mother of all worlds lives on in every one of us. The people bowed their heads, and the twin suns rose together in the dawn, one gold, one pale blue, casting their light across both worlds. From the sky above, human ships and Oran vessels hovered side by side in silent unity. Years turned into decades. Lyra grew into a warrior scholar, known across the stars as the Daughter of Peace. She carried both her grandmother's strength and her mother's compassion. Wherever there was injustice, she stood against it, not with anger, but with courage. Sam became the first ambassador between Oran and Earth. His words, always gentle and full of hope, helped heal the wounds left by centuries of mistrust. Together, they carried forward the dream their mother had fought for. And Elira, now older, walked often through the same gardens where her mother once stood. The silver tree had grown taller, its roots spreading deep into the shining soil. It had become a symbol of their unity, a living memory. One evening she stood beneath it as the sun set, their light wrapping her in soft gold and blue. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Mother, I kept my promise." The wind rustled the leaves as if answering her. Then she turned toward her children approaching from the palace steps. "Mom," Lyra said, smiling, "the council is waiting." Elira nodded. "Then let's not keep them. The stars don't wait for anyone." She looked once more at the horizon where two suns touched, their light blending into one. And as she walked with her children toward the Hall of Unity, she felt no more fear, no more pain, only peace. In the centuries that followed, bards and storytellers across both worlds told the tale of the lost princess, the woman who defied an empire, the queen who chose love over law, the daughter who changed the course of the stars. They said that when the twin suns rise together in perfect light, if you listen closely to the wind, you can still hear her voice whisper through the silver leaves, "We are not divided by blood, we are bound by love. And love, true love, is forever human." The stars watched silently, their light glimmering on the new world below. A world where the children of humans and Orans played side by side beneath twin suns. A world built not on pride or fear, but on the simple truth that one woman had carried across the stars, that love is the greatest power the universe will ever know.